Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith, Shackleton's sidekick, and in this video I'm going to really talk about some of the beefs I have with the mainstream world press media reporting on death tolls from the Bahamas Hurricane Dorian from about a week ago. You know, basically the press told the world that it was 5 people dead, and then 7, and then 10, 12, 20, 30, 40 over the week. And I think they're up to about 40 or 45. And what they do is they identify bodies and then, add it to a death toll. But when you think about it, I mean, a Category 5 hurricane sitting over an island, with 50,000 people, plus Bahama Island, 51,000, and then Abaco Island, another 17. That's about 68,000 people. 25-foot storm surge over much of the island. Things don't jive up. And if you just count the number of bodies, then what about all of the people that would have been washed out to sea? Those would be missed. So really what you have to do is look at the total population, look at the number of survivors, take the difference, and get an estimate that way. And report that to the world, not this 5, 10, 12, 7, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to talk all about that, and also about, should we rebuild? How should we rebuild? Because they'll choose to rebuild, and, what are we going to do with these, much stronger hurricanes coming into the Caribbean? How can we make the Caribbean more resilient for the time being? And how long can we, keep these populating these islands, in the face of rising sea levels and these massive superstorms? Okay, so let's get right into it. So this is my Twitter feed at Paul H. Beckwith. Okay, so I tweeted yesterday, world press completely negligent on reporting Bahamas deaths. Told the world it was 5 people, then 7, 10, 12, 20, 30, 40, based on the bodies found. The reality, Grand Bahama population in 2010 was 51,000, Abaco Island 17,000. Okay, total those, that's 68,000 people total. So did anybody count the number of people leaving the island, evacuating the island after the disaster? I haven't seen any numbers on that. News coverage doesn't show many people leaving the destroyed islands. I guess maybe, let me guess, about 28,000. That would mean 68,000 people originally, 28,000 survivors. That would mean 40,000 people are missing. Now, most of these missing people would have been washed out to sea in the storm surge. So just counting bodies that you find on the island, misses a huge number of deaths. It's not difficult to count people that have left the island. Has anybody done that? Okay, and I looked, you can look yourself, see if you can find anything. Put it in the comment section of this video. I did find that a chef fed 20,000 people, a few days ago, spread out over many islands, but that included people from other islands that were in the rescue efforts. But let's say, it's 20,000 survivors. So 20,000 survivors from 68,000, maybe 1,500 evacuating to the U.S., add in, another number of thousands of people, and you can get to about my number. Okay, 28,000 survivors, that would be 40,000 people missing. Okay, so that's the key question. Okay, and, are those numbers much more reasonable than 5? I think so. And, I wish I'd put this video together a week ago, because this is, pretty basic stuff. Okay, so what are people saying now? Well, in a Bahama newspaper, okay, well, first of all, the official government death toll is 45 as of the day I'm doing this video, but newspapers say it's in the thousands. So 45 deaths confirmed. The Bahama press says more than 3,000 people have died in the hurricane. Rescuers and relief groups are starting to reach survivors. Okay, so officially 45, but the paper, even the local paper in the Bahamas on the other islands says thousands of people. Okay, statement from the Royal Bahamas Police Force says 45 bodies have been recovered, 37 in Abaco Island and 8 in Grand Bahama Island. Okay, the numbers are staggering. They're going to be staggering. So these are the numbers that need to be reported worldwide. You know, not the slowly rising count of bodies. I mean, let's use logic, right? So, you know, you can read this article, you know, buses filled with bodies, body bags, etc. Okay, it goes on and talks about all of these things. Okay, and people have all seen pictures of the devastation and so on. Okay, so they're talking about that 6,000 number, basically. Well, is that in this article? Okay, so this is another article. Well, this is the actual article. Okay, so if you click on the link here about the, you know, estimates to, let's go up here, more than 3,000 people could have died, then you can get the actual article here. So what it says is, yes, the numbers are staggering. Okay, it mentioned that in the Mud and P area, so Mud Flats was where a lot of Haitian refugees were, and they might not even be counted in the population, I don't know, but the number of deaths could swell to over 3,000 alone, as residents in that lowland area never evacuated as floodwaters washed away their homes during the storm and washed them away, 25 feet of floodwaters. So thousands of people are feared dead just in that region alone, and then another 3,000 from Abaco Island, giving you that, you know, 3,000 in Abaco alone, giving you, you know, 6,000 people. Okay, so that's where the numbers are coming to, but those aren't official numbers. Okay, so anyway, the reporting, you know, Category 5 sits over an island for a day and a half, causes a 25-foot storm surge, which covers 2/3 of the island. You know, if you say that 2/3 of the island was covered, you know, those people were washed away, then you'd have 1/3 of the population left. And 1/3 of the 68,000 would be about 23,000, which would put the death toll about 45,000 or so. So we're talking huge numbers. Logically, we're talking huge numbers. I hope it's not as bad as that, but, you know, this is just logic 101. Now, okay, so we've had a catastrophic tragedy, you know, essentially destruction of Grand Bahama and Abaco Island, causing horrendous human misery. So the question is, what next? What's a logical pathway to pursue, both for individual people and for the nation of the Bahamas? Of course, the problem is overwhelming, but we must think it through. With no viable infrastructure, the vast majority of survivors are being evacuated to neighboring Bahamas islands. The Bahama population from the CIA fact book is presently, or was, 332,634. There were 51,756 in Grand Bahama, 17,224 people in Abaco Islands, according to you can go on Wikipedia and put in Grand Bahama, Abaco Islands, and you get these sort of estimates. They're 2010 estimates, but people, the growth or decline of population in these places is pretty small. Okay, so these numbers are probably close. So what do we do, you know, moving forward? What does the country do moving forward? I think the Bahamas government, I think all the Caribbean island governments that, you know, have any, you know, get lots of tourism funds should actually own the cruise boats. You know, the cruise ships are owned and they come and cruise companies make huge amounts of money. I don't know why the governments of these countries don't just buy their own cruise ships and stop the other cruise ships from coming. Okay, just have their own cruise ships, and getting those huge profits that there are for tourism. I mean, so much of the economies of these countries is based on tourism. Why don't they control it themselves? And the thing is each of these cruise ships can carry over 5,000 people. And they want to have them, they want to own them or have long-term leases because they're vital for transport of people and materials within islands, not just for relief work, but to evacuate islands from future hurricanes. Imagine if they had cruise ships, they could have sent them to the island, evacuated, got lots of people off the islands, and got them out of the path of Hurricane Dorian, saving all of these lives, and then brought them back after the storm had passed. All of the Bahamas Islands are in high-risk hurricane regions with hotter oceans, so higher sea surface temperature. You get more powerful storms, more Category 4, Category 5, so 25 to 30% more Cat 4, Cat 5s for each degree Celsius of global warming. They have slower forward motion and even stalling for a day and a half, as we saw. So the risks are rapidly increasing for catastrophic damage to these islands. So they need cruise ships to rapidly move people within the islands to greatly increase the Bahama resiliency. So, one cruise ship. Now, for the relief and rebuilding efforts, one cruise ship could be off Abaco Island, two off the Grand Bahamas. They can each house thousands of workers to collect debris from the islands. I suspect that most of the debris will be put on barges and just dumped into the deep ocean, which is a terrible thing to do. I mean, can it not be recycled for use in rebuilding roads, putting it within concrete, things like that? And the question is, should we rebuild? Should we rebuild? We always rebuild automatically without much, if any, thought. It's what humans do, even in the face of rising sea levels and greatly increased risks from hurricanes. We need to get rid of rigid thinking and consider all possibilities. Can we do better? So the harsh reality is that sea level rise will eventually make many islands uninhabitable. The big question is when. When will islands become uninhabitable? Putting that aside for now, we know that Bahamas will rebuild, so how should they do this? Call it renewal instead of rebuilding. So they're going to spend billions to renew these islands. Electrical power is clearly everything. So I think the most resilient systems would be huge offshore wind turbines. They're very resilient power sources. They can withstand very, very high winds. They could be scattered around the island, and each can bring power to independent onshore distribution substations by underwater cables. The cables should be buried as they go to these concrete bunker-hardened, waterproofed or on stilts distribution substations. And then they can go to, from there, they can go also through underground cables to different buildings. If they're waterproofed and buried, they have a good chance of survival, or at least can be restored very quickly after a hurricane strike. Now, one of the things in the aerial photos, it shows some structures still standing, and this is actually quite amazing, considering Category 5 for many, for a day and a half, just stalled over the island. Was it a fluke, or were these buildings built so strongly they survived Hurricane Dorian Category 5? How do we need to build a building to withstand a Category 5? Is it possible? Now, I mentioned that most of the Grand Bahama was submerged. So satellite images show the southern third or so of the island was the only part above the 20 to 25 foot storm surge. So clearly this part of the island could be renewed. Underground power cables, bunker strength buildings, resilience is the guiding principle. Okay, I'm going to continue this in a second video because I want to compare what's happened now to what happened 2 years ago with the island of Barbuda being completely destroyed. Thank you for listening.